Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to the first ever English Right Now podcast with me, Roy Woodhouse, your British English teacher. And as I said, this is the first ever English Right Now podcast. And today we're going to be talking about Christmas in the UK. We're going to be talking about traditions, the Christmas traditions that we love, and also the ones that we don't love as much. We're also going to talk about the build-up to Christmas as well. And of course, I would love to know the traditions, the Christmas traditions in your countries as well, because I'm sure they're different. Some of them will be different. And of course, if you're listening to this podcast, I'd also like to know any future topics you would like to be discussed on this podcast. But as I said, today we're going to be talking about Christmas in the UK. And joining me is a very special human being. It's a person who I've worked with for many, many years, but more importantly, has also been a dear friend for many, many years as well. It is Rob. Hello, Rob. Welcome to the English Right Now. Welcome to the first ever English Right Now podcast.
Thank you very much. Hi, Roy, and hello to everybody listening. It's great to be here, especially as you can see, it's looking very festive because it's nearly Christmas time.
It is. It's very festive. Festive is a good word that we talk about, like the festivities this time of year. And I was going to say, you've actually put me to shame, which is a great bit of vocabulary to start off with. It basically where I show that I'm not doing as well as you in that sort of sense. So you've put me to shame because there's nothing Christmassy here at all behind me. I've just got the usual sort of studio space. But you need
to make more effort. You need to make more effort, I think.
Yeah, I will.
It's that time of year where we should all be making an effort.
It's true. And talking about that, Christmas is a very special time of year in the UK. It's a great time for putting on weight, I think, adding some extra pounds. A great time for eating, a lot of drinking. But what we're going to talk about is the build-up to Christmas. So in the build-up to Christmas, when does Christmas really start in your house? When does it start?
I guess it begins at the start of December. We've got children here, so we get an advent calendar. And an advent calendar has 24 doors on it, and it's a countdown to Christmas.
25, sometimes 25, doesn't it?
So, yeah, sometimes you get one for the 25th of December, which is actually Christmas Day, isn't it? Others, the ones we've got are 24 days up to Christmas Eve. And each day you open a little door and there's a little sweet treat inside. Now, I'm afraid when I was a child, all we got was a little picture of something and no sweets. But now you have sweets in them as well.
Back in the Victorian era.
Yes, that long ago, yeah.
But the advent calendars, they're kind of like a sort of a box, a sort of paper box, cardboard box, thin cardboard box with 24 doors on, as you say. And it's the perfect way to count down to Christmas. And you talked about chocolate being kind of in there. There are a lot of companies that do not only chocolate, but other things as well. What advent calendars have you gone for this year? Which companies have you gone with?
Well, there's a big chocolate company, is Cadbury's. So we've got a Cadbury's Heroes advent calendar, which has little mini bars of their bigger chocolate bars, but little mini versions of them. So that's quite a nice treat. I mean, this is for the kids, not for me, unfortunately. I don't get them.
Have you? So in our house, I think my wife has got a Kinder one, like the Kinder Egg ones. Yeah. But they're small pieces of Kinder chocolate. And my son has got a Cadbury's one, but I don't really have a sweet tooth. So if you've got a sweet tooth, it basically means that you enjoy kind of more sort of chocolates and sweet treats. I don't really have a sweet tooth. So this year, my wife bought me an advent calendar from Lego. So I've got a Lego advent calendar. It's got minifigures, it's got little builds in it, and every day there's something new, which is really, really good.
Sounds good. But a health warning, you can't eat Lego, okay? No eating Lego.
No, but I mean, I've seen a lot of them. Some of the bigger companies, they have advent calendars. Like some of them are really expensive. You can get little jewelry. You can get. I think there's one for gin and tonic, which have 24 days of drinking. And they've become
really extravagant, haven't they? Expensive, extravagant kind of thing. Well, it should have been a simple idea of counting down to Christmas. Now it's commercialization, that I say. It's making money, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's become a big business, and every company kind of wants to get in on the act. Get in on the act is a great way of saying, like, to sort of join and get a piece of the pie. That's another good way to get a
Yeah.
slice of the action, all of the same things, to basically sort of take part and be a part of this kind of thing. And a piece of the pie basically means a share of the money, which is a lot of companies do. And some people, I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever built your own? Have you ever done a bit of DIY, do it yourself, DIY?
DIY, yes. I've made
Have you made your own advent? Have you made your own advent calendar?
I have made as a child. I made my own advent calendar. Yeah, you put two pieces of paper together.
Yeah.
You cut the doors out in the first piece, and on the paper at the back, you draw your little pictures. So I have made my own advent calendar. I was also going to say I've made my own Christmas decorations as well. Things like paper chains, long strips of paper, coloured paper. You make them into a loop. You make them into a loop, and then you make another loop, and you stick them together, and eventually you have a whole chain of bits of paper.
You are a man of many talents. So I know a lot of people, they get these kind of these they're sort of halfway between make it yourself, but they're kind of like a board with like 24 little stockings. I'm going to talk about stockings in a minute, and they put their own little kind of gifts in those stockings, which makes it more personal. So again, advent calendar, great way to kind of sort of count down to Christmas. So let's move on to talking about what's behind you, which I'm not going to go into pantomime just yet, but that'll be later. Christmas tree. When did your Christmas tree go up this year?
Yeah, so about a week into December, we go out and buy a Christmas tree. There's loads to choose from. Lots of shops sell them. And some people go for an artificial tree, so a kind of man-made tree made out of plastic. But I've always, since I was a boy, I've always liked a real Christmas tree.
Oh, that's a real tree, is it?
That's a real tree. It's a cut tree, so therefore it's being cut, not pulled out of the ground with its roots. So you may argue that's not great for the environment, but it still smells fresh. It's in a pot with some water. You had a lovely pine smell, which is lovely. Pine.
And
so it feels like you're in the
pine
forest.
needles.
Yeah.
What about the little pine needles? Do they go everywhere?
Yes. So that is a problem. So obviously, once you get it in the house is quite warm. It starts drying out a bit. The pine needles start falling onto the floor. So by Christmas Day, it won't look like this. It'll just be like a stick with a few branches.
But this is so in my house we go for a fake tree. So another way of saying artificial, you could say fake tree. I do prefer a real tree, if I'm totally honest. But you know, I've got a young kid. Kid is a slang term for child. I've got a young kid, and yeah, the idea of pine needles everywhere. He's going to put those. They're going to go into the dog's paws as well. I just think it's probably better at the moment to have a fake tree. But you've got lots of decorations. You've decorated your tree very nicely. Could you? Yeah. So you've got. I can see baubles on there. Could you point to a bauble for us?
So bauble, one of these round things. Let's see over there. Come on, let's try
up a bit.
Up here. Here we are.
Yeah, there's a bauble.
A round bauble. Obviously, we've got Christmas lights. That's the most important thing. It looks beautiful on a dark night. All the lights
and tinsel.
This shiny stuff. Sort of strand of shiny. How do you describe it? Really, it's shiny.
Well, you've just shown us exactly what it is. It's kind of a string with like little glittery bits coming off it, little strands of metallic coloured sort of paper, I guess, and plasticky sort of material.
And the light reflects on it, so it makes it look like it's sparkling. You know,
I love it. And on the top of the tree, what have you got? Is it
right at the top? Now, a lot of people traditionally might put a fairy on the top of the tree,
or an angel,
an angel, of course. We have a star up there, a star at the top of the tree.
We've got a star as well. I mean, there is a lot of sort of religious links to Christmas. Of course, it was a traditionally a religious thing. A lot of people these days, the country has got a lot of people that are atheist or agnostic. So it's moved away from religion. Some people still go to church on Christmas Day, things like this. But for a lot of people, it's more of a kind of time for spending with family. So, but it's interesting because Advent is a religious term. The star, the angel, all religious kind of things as well. But we're going to move on. So my Christmas tree went up in November.
Wow, that is early. Do you not think that's too early? Is that too early, Roy?
Yes, I do. I think that's ridiculous. But my son got overly excited to the point where he's like, so basically the Halloween decorations went down. And immediately started, it's Christmas. And I think the supermarkets have a lot to blame for that because things start appearing in like October to sort of remind children Christmas is coming.
Yeah.
And I think then my son got really excited about it. And I waited till after Armistice Day, so after the 11th. And then after that, I think we put the tree up around the 15th, which is,
Wow.
yeah, it is ridiculous. It's been up for a month now. I suppose on the one hand, you could say, well, I get the most of the tree. But I half expected my son to want to take it down and put it up again. So I'm just quite grateful. But yeah, I couldn't control my son's desire for the tree. And I just thought, well, go with it.
Do you not find that means Christmas kind of drags on? It seems to go on forever, and the magic of it has gone by the time you get to Christmas Day.
It's a really, really good expression, drags on. So drag on is like a really negative kind of, or like just a labored kind of feeling. And no, because I think when I was a kid, Christmas was very special. Christmas was very special. When you're a kid, we're going to talk about that in a moment. And as you get sort of older, it doesn't, not that it loses its magic. It does become more about going home, but you don't get the presents that you got when you were a kid. You don't get those kind of things, and it loses a little of its magic. And I think when you have your own kids, the magic comes back. So actually, I love the whole feeling of Christmas because I'm seeing it through my son's eyes. So I wouldn't say it drags on, because actually every day he's like, wow, the lights are on the tree when we turn them on at night. And for him, I see that magic that I wish I was still experiencing. So I'm kind of getting a kind of second-hand magic, let's put it like that. But
understood.
Another couple of traditions, pantomime. How do you feel about pantomime? It's a form of theatre, quite elaborate. It's quite comedic, based on often fairy tales or sort of things like Cinderella or things like Aladdin. And they come around every year. There's usually men dressed as women, women dressed as men. There's a lot of set pieces, audience participation. How do you feel about pantomime?
I love pantomime. I can't get enough of it.
Really?
I've been to a pantomime every year of my life. My wife's not so keen on it, but I drag her along, and the kids tend to like it. Usually, the pantomimes we see usually have a TV celebrity in it. So it's quite good to see somebody you know from the TV. And I just love all the traditions. There's lots of catchphrases that they have. Like it's behind you.
Yeah, so there's always the kind of villain of the piece walking behind, usually the person we call the dame. So quite often the celebrities, they either play the lead character, so it could be someone like Buttons, or not the lead. It would be the lead character quite often, and Buttons is usually the supporting character. And the dame will also often get played by a famous man, and it's a man that's sort of dressed as a woman, and usually is the mother of the main character. That's quite a common setup. And the dame will be walking around, and the villain will be after them, and the audience will be shouting, "He's behind you," or "She's behind you," and the dame will turn around, but the villain will turn around at the same time, and they won't see each other, and the audience are getting frantic. They're getting really, "Oh my goodness, he's behind you, he's behind you, he's behind you." The kids go wild. I love it. I love pantomime. I'm always scared of getting pulled up onto the stage. Now, ironically enough, I've done years of acting. I love being on the stage. I've got no kind of fear of being in front of the camera, but if you pull me out of the audience, a clown or a pantomime pulls me out of the audience, then I suddenly feel self-conscious, and I want the ground to open up and swallow me. Like, I don't know. I get really nervous about pantomime.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing about pantomime. Lots of audience participation. So they go on the audience singing and calling out. But sometimes to go up on stage, I always make sure that I never book a ticket or a seat near the front of the stage. I try and go to the back where they won't see me. But it's more for the kids. It's for the kids. They get on stage sometimes, don't they? And they're sort of they're mocked, or I've made them do something stupid, but they do get usually a prize or a gift at the end of it. So there's some rewards.
And talking about that very quick, this is something I forgot to talk about the other day. But quite often schools in the UK, they do like a Christmas play. So just the other day, my son, he played an innkeeper. He really loved it. He was singing, he was dancing on stage. I was really proud of him. Of course, you can't take photos because it's kids, so I can't share that with anybody in social media land. But I was really proud. It's his life anyway. But quite often, do your kids still do these things, or are they a bit too?
They're getting a bit too old for that now. But obviously, through sort of the primary school years when they were younger, there were the nativity plays. The sort of the religious story of the birth of Jesus, carols. Sometimes they also did a very simple kind of pantomime for the parents. That was quite fun. So there's
I
lots
think
of, sort of end of term celebrations, and obviously a Christmas party as well. They usually have a Christmas party just to round off the end of school.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can talk about Christmas work parties soon as well. But the nativity play, you talked about nativity there. That relates specifically to like the kind of the play that talks about the birth of Jesus Christ, the idea of Mary and Joseph. A lot of them do base it, but I wouldn't say it's overly religious, even in schools. It's just kind of the theme is there. I suppose in certain schools it would be more religious, but I mean, my son's play the other day was based on the nativity, but it wasn't very, there were camels in it. There were dancing camels. There were dancing donkeys. There were dancing. There was a lot of random creatures as well. I think, crabs. I don't know. Things like that. But
okay.
Yeah, I don't think the Christmas crab. I don't know. But let's move on to one more final sort of build-up idea. Well, we talked about stockings, putting stockings on the wall. That's the thing you put the presents in. But I wanted to talk about Elf on the Shelf. Your children may be too old for this, but do you do Elf on the Shelf in your house?
Well, to be honest, we don't, and I think it's a relatively new concept. I think. I mean, certainly when I was a child, we didn't have Elf on the Shelf. I'm aware of it now, but I think it's quite a recent thing, or something from America.
Yeah,
possibly,
relatively
right?
recent. I heard it was. I think somebody said it came from a book, and I'm going to double check that and put it down in the description whether or not the origin of Elf on the Shelf. But it just seemed to come out of nowhere. Now the idea of Elf on a Shelf. So Santa Claus. We need to talk about Santa Claus in a minute.
Yeah.
But Santa Claus has these helpers where he lives in the North Pole, and those are elves. And basically, the idea of an elf on a shelf is a sort of a little person with like a green hat. We've got one downstairs, and this elf is put on the shelf, and it represents this kind of sort of a slightly naughty elf. But they're also observing the children to make sure that they're being good. Because if the children are not good, they get put on the naughty list. And then they don't get any presents. So it's basically like an elf that's spying on the children. It's a bit creepy when I say it like that. Yeah. But it's basically an elf that's watching the children. And to make it a bit more magical, the elf can be put on a shelf, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The elf can be put on a shelf. And every night when the children go to bed, the parents move the elf around the house. So it's almost like the elf is up to no good, like being a bit naughty. And in the morning, they may be like have drawn on something like a picture, or they may be hanging from the lights and things like this. And when my son comes down in the morning, he's like, "Dad, look, the elf's there." And it's a little bit more magic, I think. Now, elf and shelf, they rhyme. So elf.
Yes, I was going to say it wouldn't work if it was elf on the sofa, would it? Or elf on the table.
Cool. I think rhymes often catch on. Rhyming sort of they catch on, and then in turn, that created a whole bunch of memes on the internet. So there's a popular trend, and it's still going. Some of them are a bit naughty, sexual in origin, a bit rude. But I saw one the other day. So they say, "You've heard of Elf on the Shelf. Now look at this." Or now we have, "You've heard of Elf on the Shelf." And then they've got a picture that you have to sort of decode, sort of work out the link. And I saw one with Santa on a bottle of fizzy drink. It was Santa on a Fanta. So you've heard of Elf on a Shelf. Here's Santa on a Fanta. And there's thousands of these. Some of them are a bit sexual. Some of them are a bit rude, really, But this whole trend was created from this, where adults took it and sort of said, "You've heard of this, now here's this." We get inundated, flooded, sort of, to the point where this oversaturation of these kind of things. But I find them hilarious. So,
but you were talking about Santa, Roy. You were talking about Santa,
yes.
Like Santa and Fanta. But Santa Claus is a very important part of Christmas and the build up to Christmas and Christmas Day itself. Yeah.
So let's move on to that. We talked about the build up, and Santa is coming. This idea of Santa is coming. So Christmas itself, when we've done with all the build up, the Christmas tree, the festive coffees. I've got a festive coffee here. Look at that; it's very nice. And there's so many other things. The Christmas markets that come where you can buy all the stuff. When it all comes down to it, Christmas is basically 3 days. Now, a lot of countries across the world they will sort of celebrate Christmas on Christmas Eve, but we tend to celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. Well, we do in my house. Is it the same in yours?
Yeah, no, absolutely the same. Yes, Christmas Day is the big day. Yeah.
So quite often at work we may have a Christmas party, which is often well, it often goes somewhere anyway, but with a lot of hangovers the next morning. But we'll have that a few days before. And a lot of people work a half day on Christmas Eve. So Christmas Eve, you get home. What do you do in your house?
Well, you say lots of preparation. There's still some cooking to be done. Maybe make some mince pies.
Staple, like a little pie that we call them mince pies, but it's not mince meat.
No.
It's not a savory dish, so to speak. It is actually sweet, sweet pie, little sweet pastries, stunning.
It's kind of chopped up. Yeah, bits of fruit mixed up with sugar and stuff and put into sort of pastry. Yeah, they're lovely. Mince pies, sausage rolls as well. They're more savory. So there's a bit of cooking to do, bit of tidying to do. There's usually last minute wrapping of presents to do. And then when all that's done, you can sit down for a bit, have a drink, of course, start the drinking, sit down and watch probably a good Christmas classic movie, something like Elf, maybe. We were talking about elves.
It's a Wonderful Life. I'm going back even further. It's a Wonderful Life. Some Christmas tradition movies in my house. I always remember when I was a kid, there were trilogies of films. So you'd have Back to the Future Part 1, 2, and 3 over the 3 days. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day. You'd have the Indiana Jones trilogy, and you'd have the Star Wars, the original trilogy. They were kind of Christmas. They're not Christmas themed, but in my head they became Christmassy.
I think it's partly because
Love Actually.
Yeah, Love Actually is a classic, isn't it? But I think the thing about saying they're not Christmas themed, but I think Christmas, because it's a time to relax, maybe not do much work, get together with the family. You just want to watch some films. Can we just pause there because the door's gone?
Yes,
the postman's
absolutely.
Pause.
Gosh.
Pause there.
So I've unpaused the video. You've just had a delivery. Was it Santa Claus?
It wasn't Santa. It was just the regular postman. But he did have some Christmas cards for me.
There you go. Christmas cards. We've forgotten to talk about Christmas cards. My goodness. Gosh, Christmas cards. My son loves to send them to everybody at school. They're quite a common tradition. I don't tend to post them anymore because post in this country is quite expensive. Only to the nearest and dearest. So
I'm still waiting for mine. Still waiting for mine.
Keep looking. But so you get to Christmas Eve, and then as I've got a younger kid than say yours, my son is still in primary school. He'll go to bed at like 7 o'clock at night, and we'll tell him go to bed because Santa Claus in this country, Santa Claus basically delivers the presents overnight. In some countries, the kids get the presents at midnight. I've discovered, and it's a very different feeling. But the kids go to bed, and it's one of the most exciting evenings ever because you're like, oh my God, is he going to come? Is he going to come? Is he going to come? As a kid, and then of course the parents are downstairs having a drink and relaxing, getting ready for Christmas to come. And we tend to leave out a mince pie and a glass of milk for Santa Claus. Well, we do in my house. Sometimes some biscuits. And that's Christmas Eve. We have a big dinner, drinking. Go on.
I was going to say, we also leave a carrot out for the reindeer.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, my son has been talking about that this morning. So maybe you've been sort of telling him it's a carrot for the reindeer. Of course, do you know how many reindeer Santa has traditionally?
Well, there's Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, isn't there?
He's actually not traditional. So originally, before some point in the 1800s, Santa used to walk around, and then he got 8 reindeer. And fortunately, I've got a list somewhere that I can't find. There we go. I can tell you all 8 of the reindeer right now. There is, I should have done a quiz with you. There's Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. And prior to 1821, he was walking around. And then for around 100 years, Santa had 8 reindeer. And then in 1939, somebody wrote a story about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and he became the most famous reindeer. Yeah. There you go. So he got 9 after 1939. So he had nine reindeer up until to today, from 1939 onwards. So Santa comes, and then, so as I say, like, you don't want to get too, when you've got younger kids, you can't get too tipsy. Tipsy is another word of saying slightly drunk on the night before Christmas, because children on Christmas Day in the UK wake up at a ridiculous hour. They just absolutely. My son is up at 5 o'clock, running downstairs. I can hear, and you're like, oh my goodness, it's time. And then you'll hear, Dad, he's come. And the house will be full of presents. I'm not going to say where the presents came from. It's clearly Santa Claus that delivered them. And I'm not going to ruin anybody's feelings there. And then basically that morning is spent with us, our children opening presents. Maybe your wife has got you something, you've got something for your wife, you give them presents, and everybody exchanges gifts to exchange gifts. What are you hoping for Christmas this year?
Well, I'm hoping for a light lamp. Do you know what I mean by light lamp?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. Aren't all lights, all lamps giving out lights?
Yes, well, this gives out a special type of light because this time of year is so dark and depressing that
It is.
you don't get enough daylight. So
No,
this
we don't.
emits daylight or the same equivalent kind of rays as daylight. So it's supposed to cheer me up. Some people call them a sad lamp because you get sad in the winter.
Seasonal affective disorder. So SAD stands for seasonal affective disorder, doesn't it?
Yes,
And yeah, it's a sad lamp. I want a happy lamp, though. That's what I want. But anyway,
I'm hoping the sad lamp will make me happy. So
I hope so as well. If you get really depressed, give it away. So yeah, Christmas Day in the morning, we're opening presents, and then we have in my house, we actually I go to the pub with my father and a few other friends, and we have a couple of drinks from between 12 and 2, and then we go back home and have Christmas dinner, Christmas lunch, and I actually cook it. Normally in my house, I am the one that cooks Christmas dinner. So Christmas dinner for me is usually it's some form of poultry. I try to get turkey. Traditionally, it's turkey, but most places tend to sell out of turkey really, really quickly. Sell out means there's no more left for sale. They sell out of turkey, and then I end up buying chicken. Or, I think one year we had the traditional, it's not traditional at all. We had a ridiculous dinner of sausage and mash, bangers and mash, because it's the only thing I can get my hands on. Okay. But quite often it ends up being chicken rather than turkey. But we try for turkey. Roast potatoes, which are potatoes that are sort of covered in oil and cooked in the oven. They're roasted. We roast our turkeys as well in the oven. And we stuff them. What do you stuff your chicken? What do you stuff your turkey with?
Very important to have stuffing.
Yeah, how polite. How personal of me. What do you stuff your chicken with?
We have some ready-made stuffing, so we stuff the turkey with some ready-made stuffing. Gives it a bit more flavour, certainly. And the most important thing, I don't know where you stand on this, but in terms of vegetables, I mean, parsnips are lovely, carrots.
Yeah.
But I love Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts, I do. Do you know, as a kid, I hated them because they're quite strong tasting. So they're small and round, and they're quite divisive, which basically means people either love them or hate them. And they split opinion, basically, divisive. And yeah, these days I eat them. I don't know if I actually enjoy them, but I eat them. So I tend to I do have them on the plate because they're traditional. And we cover them in gravy, which is like a meat sauce. And then yeah, basically, I think that takes away some of the bad taste, from my opinion. It's not bad taste, but it's a very strong taste. It's an acquired taste.
Yeah.
And I tend to have those Brussels sprouts, gravy, roast potatoes, turkey with stuffing, sage and onion stuffing usually, and sometimes pigs in blankets on the side, which are little small sausages wrapped in bacon.
But I always look forward to, although I'm usually stuffed by the time I've eaten Christmas dinner, meaning very, very full.
Really full. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've got a sweet tooth. Like you were saying you haven't. I've got a sweet tooth. So I really look forward to dessert, to pudding. If I've got room, pudding. I'll have Christmas pudding. Yeah, with custard. Yeah. Oh, lots of custard on it. Christmas pudding is really heavy kind of dessert, but it's really tasty. Something lighter, another option is trifle. Do you like trifle?
Oh, yeah, trifle. I tend to, I'm not a fan of trifle. There's too much custard and cream in it for me. Christmas pudding I do like because even though it's sweet, it's slightly savoury. There's slightly something spicy about it. And one thing we need to talk about as well on Christmas dinner is crackers. We have crackers.
Yes.
So they're like these paper things with a cylinder in the middle. You pull them, and in the middle there's a terrible joke, which is traditional. There's like a rubbish toy, and usually a paper crown. Do you wear your paper crown?
I always. I love all these traditions. You see, I love Christmas.
Yeah,
so yeah, paper crown straight on. Plastic toy, usually gets thrown away. And then we all read our jokes out, and it's like having dinner with Roy every day because all these jokes are so bad.
Thanks for that. So and then you get to the end of it. There's probably a lot of wine, sometimes mulled wine, which is like I often compare it's like a fruity wine with herbs and spices in it, and it's kind of
hot.
like it's warm. And I often say it's like a warm sangria. It's very different, but it's got that kind of same idea of putting wine with something fruity or something flavoursome. And we end up drinking quite a bit. We end up eating a lot. And that's the end of Christmas Day. So the kids play with their toys while the family either cook, eat, pour drinks, or drink. And that seems to be basically Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. But Christmas Day is a day of kind of taking it to the next level, really taking it up. And then the day after is usually a holiday in the UK for most of us. It's Boxing Day. And actually, Boxing Day is my mother's birthday. So it's a very special day in our house. But that is traditionally when there's a game of football. There's often a game of football that we watch on Boxing Day. And also the Boxing Day sales start in the UK, which I think is more important for a lot of people. This
is crazy, I think, Roy, because you spend all December shopping, buying Christmas presents and stuff. You have one day off but on Christmas Day, all the shops are shut, aren't they? And there's no transport, and everything closes down. Then as soon as Boxing Day comes, some people are off to the shops again to spend more money.
Spend more money and buy stuff at a cheaper price that we paid before Christmas, and then you can't really win. I feel that you can't win, but. Yeah, Christmas in the UK is one of my favourite times, and I think it's just those 3 days. Although it extends on because then we have you have to get your Christmas tree down by the 12th night, don't we? What is the 12th night? Is it
I think that's about the 6th of January.
6th of January. I always get, if it's up after that, it's bad luck. I always get confused whether it's the 6th or 7th, which is never. I always have to look. It's the same day every year, but you have to get your Christmas tree down. And that always feels like. It's just after New Year. We'll talk about New Year another time. But those 3 days are very important. And a lot of people take the days off between Boxing Day to after New Year to kind of really make the most of it. They get like a 10-day kind of time with their family.
I think that period now is called Betwixtmas, isn't it?
Betwixtmas, yes. You got
Christmas and New Year.
Some people call Christmas Xmas to move it away from the religious thing. People call it Xmas and Betwixtmas, and then you've got New Year. Which comes up, and then we can talk about New Year in another episode at the time. But before we move on today, have you got your Christmas jumper?
I haven't.
I see. Neither of us are wearing them. But...
Lovely Christmas black I'm wearing today. I still need to buy need to buy the Christmas jumper still. That's still on my list of things to do. I've got my long list of things still to do. It's such a busy time before Christmas. It is so much to do.
And there's so many other things we could have talked about. Mistletoe. You go to places, there's mistletoe. If you stand under mistletoe, you're meant to, you're a pair of lovers. It's called that. I think it's got this idea that fertility originally, but the idea if you hang mistletoe, you're meant to kiss the person you love under the mistletoe. So my camera's gone all hazy now. You're meant to kiss the person. There's a lot of other traditions, and I'd love to know other traditions. First of all, we're going to end it here today because we talked a lot about Christmas, and I love that you love Christmas as much as I love Christmas because I think it's a wonderful time. It is my favourite time of year, I'd say.
Christmas only comes once a year, they say, don't they? Christmas.
It does. It's a great expression. I'm hoping Santa Claus brings me lots of good things, but more importantly, lots of amazing things for my son. But I would love to know in the comments below or anywhere you can, any of your Christmas traditions, the people that are listening or the people that are watching. I'd love to know what your Christmas traditions are. I've heard of things like fish in a bath and things like this from certain countries. I find it fascinating. I'd love to know about Christmas traditions and any other questions you have. And of course, this podcast will be sort of happening more regularly now. This is the first one. So if you've got any topics that you'd like to appear on the podcast, please do make a suggestion. But from me today, I just want to say thank you massively, Rob, for joining me on this one. And feel free to join me again, please. Let's do this more and more.
It's been a pleasure, Roy, and I want to wish you and everybody out there a happy Christmas and have a great time. Even if you're not celebrating, have a good time.
Merry Christmas as well is another thing we say. Merry Christmas. To be merry is an old-fashioned word to mean happy. Merry Christmas, happy Christmas. And we will see you, or you'll see us, or listen to us in the next podcast. See you soon. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.